Welcome, and let yourself drift down for a quiet visit to the ocean floor, where the day is measured in slow currents and steady balances, and where warmth, pressure, and silence are tended like a low blue flame that never flickers. While we float here together, you can gently tap like and subscribe if you wish, and you can explore the playlist link in the description to keep learning in a calm way while you drift towards sleep. How sleepy are you on a scale of 1 to 10? Imagine yourself sinking very slowly, not falling, not hurrying, just settling as if you are a fine grain of sand. The light from above thins into a twilight haze, and then into a deep, restful dusk. The water feels hushed. There is a steady calm that never pushes, never demands, and you match that calm without effort. There is no need to make anything happen. You are simply sinking into a world that prefers its rhythms, soft and even. The surface waves are far away, and the last traces of sun fade like a memory of warmth on a winter window. You find yourself relaxed by the sense that here, at the bottom of the ocean, all motion is slow, all choices are simple, and everything depends on gentle maintenance, patient balance, and the reliable continuity of the deep. The sea floor itself comes closer, not rushing, simply appearing as a shadow that strengthens, a fabric woven of fine sediments, scattered stones, and the occasional smooth dome of an immovable boulder. The ground is pale in many places, beige and grey, and as delicate as chalk dust, with swaths of darker, finer silt gathered in quiet hollows. Some areas are heavily textured, rippled by slow currents that have carved a silent script across the sand. Other stretches are as even as a sleeping field of snow. In places, clumps of manganese nodules rest like patient marbles, grown over millennia from layers only atoms thick added with soft persistence. A long day at the bottom of the ocean unfolds not in events, but in a sustained hum of conditions, in the unassuming caretaking that keeps temperatures just cold, pressures unwaveringly firm, and sounds softened to a velvet hush. Around you, the water is close to freezing, yet fluid, usually 2 to 4 degrees above ice, and it feels not cold as much as steady, dependable, the kind of coolness that keeps everything slow. Here, warmth is not a burst, but a gently managed account, paid out in whispers. The crust below seeps a small, measured heat. Buried microbes metabolize with patience, releasing traces of energy that blur the line between purely physical and quietly biological warmth. Where the crust offers a little more enthusiasm, vents and seeps add their punctuation, though even these are less eruptions than sustained exhalations. The milder ones release faintly warmer water that curls upward, mixing and mellowing into the background chill. The bolder vents, the black smokers and shimmering chimneys, sit like distant hearths, and even they are steady in their own way, rising columns of mineral-rich warmth that can nurture entire microcosms of life without ever breaking the larger rhythm. You settle between these influences, feeling the slow interplay. Heat moves here by conduction and advection, by contact and by flow, always moderated by a vastness of water that erases sharp edges. The ocean is a great reservoir and a master of moderation. Temperature changes are rarely sudden. Heat spreads and dilutes, and in the abyss, it takes time to drift from one place to another. This patience is a kind of comfort. Imagine lying on the softest, finest grained sand, every point of contact supported, the water pressing evenly from all sides, and the chill of the deep balanced by the faint, unwavering ember of the earth beneath. The gentle rhythm continues as you breathe, and the thought rises and falls with the presence of the water around you. Pressure accompanies you like a dependable companion. It is present, thorough, and never erratic. At these depths, the weight of the column above is not a burden, but a blanket, folded perfectly around every contour. The molecules of water are very slightly compressed, and everything yields just enough to avoid strain. Animals here do not resist the pressure so much as they match it. They are built to be consistent with their surroundings. Cell membranes are flexible, proteins are tuned. Space is filled not with gas, but with fluid, and every structure finds a harmony with the push of the water. Imagine the solace of never needing to brace against gusts or sudden jolts. Pressure here is not an adversary. It is a constant tone, a bass note that hums so steadily that it becomes part of the silence. That silence is not a complete absence of sound. It is a sifted soundscape, stripped of clatter. Far above, storms can throb like distant drums, yet their edges are softened by layers of water. The calls of whales may pass through now and then, elongated and low, stretched into instruments of distance. Very close to the seafloor, there is a quiet crackle of micro bubbles at some vents, a faint grainy hiss of suspended particles settling against sediment, the tiniest gritty slide of a shell as it rotates to a new resting angle. Shrimp may click, though even here the clicks feel patient. The grand sum is a hush that never feels empty. It is a soft, continuous weave of gentle noise that invites the mind to relax and drift. Over this day on the seafloor, the rhythm of maintenance holds steady. You can imagine a slow sunrise and sunset that are not composed of light, but of subtle shifts in currents and the nearly undetectable change in the direction of deep tides. Internal waves may flow through like almost invisible pages turning, bending the density of the water, lifting a sheet of slightly warmer water by a hand's width before letting it slide back. The ocean keeps time without watches. Gravity from moon and sun pulls on the deep as surely as on the surface, and the deep responds in a dance too patient for most eyes to notice. Sensors would record it as a mild undulation in pressure, a slight change in flow, a breath so gentle that the sand hardly stirs. And so even time here is slow, and with slowness comes ease. Life on the bottom knows this tempo well. A sea cucumber moves as though it has all the minutes in the world, mouth framed by delicate tentacles that gather organic flakes from the water and the sediment. An amphipod rattles forward and then rests, its movements efficient, almost tidy. Brittle stars extend arms and retract them with careful poise, stirring the sediment just enough to find what they need. Many beings here rely on the marine snow that drifts down from the busy, brighter layers above. That snow is not white, but a soft brown confetti of tiny particles, fragments of dead plankton, discarded mucus houses, microbial clumps, and tiny fecal pellets, gently aggregated and gently descending. The deep treats this rain as a gift that must be used frugally. Every fragment is inspected. Every morsel is taken apart and reassembled. Microbes cover the particles and hum along, running their quiet metabolisms, building order from the simplest building blocks, and releasing warmth in amounts too small to feel yet cumulative over vast areas and times. In the sediments below, the story continues in layers. Oxygen penetrates only a short way before it is consumed, and beneath that line, other transitions unfold. Nitrate, manganese oxides, iron, sulfate, and finally methane at the deepest reducing layers, all part of a gentle ladder of energy use. Each rung supports a community that has learned how to live slowly, conserving energy, producing little, consuming little, but doing so ceaselessly. It is the slowest kind of bustle. Nutrients recycle in place. If you could place your hand on the sediment, you would feel nothing dramatic, just cool solidity and an almost imperceptible exhale of dissolved chemicals moving across tiny gradients. Coarser sand may sift under your palm. Finer mud would hold your print and then gradually blur it back into anonymity as grains settle and microcurrents erase edges with care. Some places on the bottom host hydrates, crystalline cages, where water molecules hold small gas molecules like methane. These structures exist because the pressure here is strong and the temperature low. They are stable in a narrow corridor of conditions, and they stay as long as the corridor stays. Even these solids are a kind of maintenance. They represent balance held in place by depth and chill. Changes, when they come, are measured and slow. A shift in bottom water temperature by a fraction of a degree. A shift in pressure by a slight change in sea level over the course of centuries. And the hydrates adjust. They do not burst. They rearrange with the patience of snow compressing into ice. On the basalt that forms the ocean floor beneath the sediments, heat from the Earth's interior moves upward in whispers. The crust is not hot by human standards, not where it meets the deep ocean, but it carries a long memory warmth that simply refuses to disappear. Heat flow varies with age of the crust, higher near young ridges, lower in the older plains. The numbers are small, measured in milliwatts per square meter, like a tiny LED in a vast dark room. Yet the effect across the whole ocean is significant because the area is large and the time unbroken. That constant small release helps maintain the deep's cold equilibrium, preventing the water from freezing even at its near zero temperatures, while the water in return moves the flux into an even line. Where oceans meet ridges, vents express the deeper energy more clearly, but not chaotically. Vent fluids rise because they are warmer and less dense, and as they rise, they mix and temper themselves. Chimneys build from minerals that fall out as the fluids cool, chimneys that grow by a millimeter and a whim of turbulence, then a bit more, then erode, then rebuild. The result is a sculpted skyline that remains recognizable even as it changes. Around these places, chemosynthetic life recruits the hidden energy in the chemical bonds of substances like hydrogen sulfide and methane. Bacteria and archaea turn chemistry into biology with a slow, dependable efficiency. Tube worms, clams, and mussels house these microbes and become living monuments to the patience of symbiosis. Even their growth is a lullaby of repetition, cell by cell, tube by tube, shell layer by shell layer, a persistent statement that warmth, pressure, and quiet can be translated into life. If you move away from vents into the open plains again, you feel the silence grow thicker, not oppressive, just fuller. The cold returns to its ordinary level, and the water's weight returns to its usual cradle. There are no quick fixes and no quick failures here, only nudges and returns. The deep currents brush the sea floor like a hand smoothing a blanket. They carry a few grains of sand, then let them rest a little farther on. As currents shift, they tidy up ripples and lay down new ones, each a record not of the hour, but of broad conditions that stretch across seasons and years. The lines look simple, but they are the patient handwriting of the ocean's memory. If there are instruments here, they share the same relationship to pressure and quiet. A seismometer rests in a small frame, listening for faint tremors from the earth, not as a startled witness, but as a calm scribe, marking gentle waves from distant quakes that arrive as almost elegant oscillations. A heat flow probe sits upright, thin cables leading to a data logger encased in titanium or glass. The housing equalized with oil so the pressure finds no empty spaces to crush. Landers carry cameras and lights, but they keep their brightness modest and their movements minimal. Floats and syntactic foam appear like polished stones, neutral in water, content to sit and wait for the timeline they were given. When they return to the surface, it is by the most gradual of steps, a weight released, buoyancy established, a day or more of upward drifting, still the same patience, still the same acceptance of the ocean's scale. To spend a day here is to let go of the drama of quick changes and to allow yourself to feel continuity. You notice how the deep guards its temperature by sheer size, how its pressure is absolute in the best sense, and how its silence includes sound but filters out sharpness. Imagine your body becoming a little like the creatures here, tuned to the ambient pressure so that inside and outside are in agreement, tuned to the low, even temperature, so that you are neither waking nor sleeping, simply resting and tuned to the soundscape, so the small clicks and distant rumbles are like slow rain on a roof far away. The gentle rhythm continues. You are allowed to be still and to find the stillness full. Above, the surface world turns from day to night and back to day again. But here, the clock's hands move in a circle that looks more like a long arc. The deep ocean holds water that may be hundreds, even thousands of years from the moment it last saw sunlight near the surface. It carries a signature of the latitude and season where it sank, as if a note folded into its pocket. That signature changes only as the water mixes, and mixing is mellowed by scale. The abyssal water masses creep along the bottom of the basins, drawn by gravity and shaped by the contours of the land. Their borders diffuse, their minds quiet. When one water mass meets another, they do not collide. They blend, exchanging properties molecule by molecule in a process that is never in a hurry. To watch them is to watch a long conversation spoken in murmurs. Within the sediment, worms and burrowing animals keep the upper layer gently turned. Their work is not abrupt, but meticulous. A polychaete extends a head out of a gallery, brushes organic flecks inside, and then withdraws to continue its patient rearrangement. A small clam opens and closes like a door, moving on a slow hinge, filtering a few milliliters of water, then a few more. A tiny starfish inches across the seafloor, leaving a soft line of prints that the next current will soften with a sleepy hand. Over hours, the surface of the sediment changes in ways that are easy to miss and comforting to anticipate. The texture evolves without judgment, the way a well-used blanket gathers reassuring folds. Light here is almost always a matter of absence, but there are exceptions. Bioluminescence is one. A small copepod, disturbed by a microcurrent, releases a cloud of blue light no brighter than a sigh. A comb jelly glides past, and its cilia refract any trace of light into a rolling rainbow, subdued and delicate. A fish carries a row of dim organ lights that outline a silhouette made for invisibility from above and below. Even predators adapt their brightness into a tool for balance rather than shock, using it to match the faint glow from the surface or to communicate in whispers rather than shouts. The deep invents its own language of light that respects the quiet, and that quiet in turn allows the light to be seen fully without strain. Tucked in some corners, the sea floor forms canyons and trenches. These are simply deeper folds of the same quilt, places where pressure adds a few more layers and temperature holds steady with the same fidelity. Landslides that sculpt submarine canyons happen on scales of time the sea floor accepts as part of its history. Their edges soften slowly. The new slopes find a new angle where grains just resist sliding further. Through these spaces, turbidity flows sometimes move, heavy clouds of sediment that travel like low, dense rivers. When they move, they are a steady, gravity-driven drift that eventually settles into sheets of new material. Over the long day, you are visiting, you are unlikely to meet such a flow. You will simply notice that far off, the ocean has more forms than you can see at once, and that every form has its own long routine. Imagine the warmth again, not heat as you might feel from sunlight on skin, but warmth as the knowledge that temperature here is maintained by constant attention from the planet itself and by the softness of mixing. The ocean is like a sleeping creature that breathes in heat and breathes it out slowly, never letting one breath be too cold or too warm. If you could watch the molecules, you would see constant movement. They do not sleep, but their collective mood is calmly average. Hotter ones share energy with colder ones. Everything moves toward equilibrium, and equilibrium is what the deep fosters with devotion. The gentle rhythm continues, and your own thoughts pick up the same cadence. Your body understands the value of steady conditions, and you feel a subtle sense of safety that comes from being cradled by an environment built on constancy. Pressure is perhaps the most distinctive feature of the deep, yet it is also the most soothing. It is everywhere, equal in every direction. It does not lean on you in any one way, and so it becomes almost invisible. Animals evolved here are not resisting it constantly. They are expressions of it, shaped to match the medium they inhabit. Proteins adapt to fold and function better under pressure. Membranes adapt to maintain fluidity by varying lipid composition. Bones, where present, are not braced against a vacuum, but matched to the local needs of structure and motion. No gas bladders to tune and retune. No spaces that might collapse. Everything is in accord with the press of water. If pressure changes here, it does so as tides rise and fall by a small increment and then return. It is like a very slow nod that keeps conversation with the moon. Sound in the deep is a study in how much can be conveyed without sharpness. Low frequency waves travel long distances, their wavelengths too long to be easily scattered. A seafloor hydrophone would record a continuous record, an audio version of a fog, within which distinct notes can be picked out if you listen with deliberate calm. There is faraway thunder, softened by depth. There are the creaks and groans of icebergs moving and melting, translated down to the bottom as sustained tones. There are the rhythmic booms of volcanic eruptions far across the ocean that sometimes drift as the faint thud of a heartbeat at the scale of a planet. Fish make sounds too, drumming muscles against swim bladders in the midwater. Though down here, most fish have no such organs. The silence is not mute. It is curated, and it allows a body to release any expectation of alarm. On the seabed, instruments that measure sound, temperature, pressure, chemistry, and seismic motion share a temperament with this place. Their materials are chosen to resist corrosion without showiness. Their electronics designed to sleep most of the time, waking only to sip power for a measurement and then rest again. A battery might last months or years, and that is because the devices have learned the lesson of the deep. Go slow, use only what you need, let the background do the work. Over a day, The logs they keep look like lines that barely tilt. Pressure holds constant. Temperature wobbles by 1/10 of a degree. Sound levels rise and fall with the tide. Chemistry shifts gradually as a plume of deep water with a slightly different signature passes by. If you place your attention on a hydrothermal vent field again, you will see the way maintenance here is more explicit. The vent fluid emerges hot and chemically rich, but the surrounding ocean is so overwhelming in volume that the vent's influence is kept local and slender. Bacteria oxidize sulfide in a steady way, turning it into energy they store in their own bodies. Animals harvest that energy by hosting bacteria inside specialized tissues, or by grazing thin films, or by filtering water to trap them like tiny gardeners. Waste is recycled almost immediately. Minerals precipitate and bind to chimneys, which grow by slow accretion. When a chimney collapses, the rubble becomes new surfaces for colonization, and the cycle continues. The vent field is a great public square where the deep does its quiet business without fanfare. Moving into cold seeps, the texture is different, but the routine is similar. Methane and other hydrocarbons ooze through sediment pores with quiet insistence. Here too, microbes link chemistry to metabolism, use hydrogen sulfide and methane as energy, and form communities that convert invisible flows into visible mats and colonies. Mussel beds appear where the seep is stable, shells pointing upward, valves opening and closing in tiny adjustments that look like breathing. Tube worms reach upward with red plumes that exchange chemicals with the surrounding water. The environment is under the same blanket of pressure and silence, and the same moderation of heat. The gentle rhythm continues, and you continue to drift, noticing how many ways the deep sustains itself with small, reliable acts. You become aware of gravity acting quietly on every fine particle. Marine snow settles in spiral paths, slowed by the drag of the water. As it lands, it makes no sound that you can hear, but it changes the surface in microscopic ways. Layers build, they compress. Clays align their tiny plates and squeeze out water over decades and centuries. Pore spaces close, others open. Pathways form for fluids to find their way upward or sideways. The sediment is not a dead blanket, but a memory device, writing in slow, steady script that records the shifting currents of dust from deserts, ashes from distant eruptions, pollen wafted from continents, and shells from microscopic plankton that teem in the upper sunlit waters. Each layer is thin and delicate, and together they thicken into a confident archive. On the broader scale, bottom currents maintain a climate of gentle movement. Water in the abyss flows across the deepest basins, faintly influenced by the Earth's rotation, turning slowly as it goes. This adds another thread of predictability. The flows are strong enough to carry silt along the seafloor as a near bottom layer, and weak enough to keep stones in place. Where current speeds increase around a ridge or a seamount, you might see sand waves, long ripples aligned with the flow. They do not migrate quickly. They creep, they hold, they creep again. The distance they travel in a year might be measured in a handful of meters or less. To watch them is to watch time sliding by at a friendly pace. In the upper waters, storms come and go, but down here, only their broadest outlines remain. When hurricanes pass far above, the abyss feels their passing as a mildly increased mixing, as a slow transport of slightly different water properties downward. The deep remains composed. The kind of maintenance that happens here is about smoothing peaks and filling valleys until the world looks like the same soft landscape that invites sleep. If ever you have wrapped yourself in a heavy blanket to quiet your body and your thoughts, you know the kind of comfort pressure provides here, and you can let your breath fall into sync with the deep's deliberate mood. Halfway through your day, on the seafloor, you might smile at the way your attention now mirrors the environment. Still awake, comment the secret word, nebula. As you rest in this place, consider the patient work of chemistry. Dissolved oxygen slowly diffuses downward and is used. Where oxygen yields to nitrate and then to sulfate, tiny zones arise where different microbes thrive, each with its preferred conditions, each contributing to the soft maintenance of balance. Carbon cycles through many forms, from organic fragments to carbon dioxide dissolved in the water, then to carbonate minerals that may precipitate in minute amounts. In some places, methane reacts with sulfate at the edge of a seep, removing a greenhouse gas from the water and stitching it into solids. The process is not dramatic, but is deeply thorough. It resembles the way a careful person tidies a room, not by sweeping all at once, but by quietly moving from corner to corner, straightening a line here, dusting a surface there, until the whole room feels gently in order. Where a submarine volcano builds a new edifice, the deep again finds a slow cadence. Fresh lava cools rapidly in the chill water, forming glassy skins that crackle softly and then settle. Pillow basalts bulge and freeze, stacked like loaves awaiting a long rest. Heat radiates outward and upward, and in the months and years that follow, vents become established, then colonized. Each stage is gradual. Each adjustment redistributes energy and chemicals until a new stability is reached. The world here is not brittle. It flexes with extraordinary patience. With your attention comfortable, you may imagine the instruments again and how scientists design them to respect the deep's priorities. Titanium for strength and corrosion resistance. Glass spheres for buoyancy that can handle pressure by being uniformly compressed. Oils and flexible bladders to avoid rigid voids. Materials chosen to be neutrally buoyant so that pieces neither fall nor rise aggressively. Such designs mirror the deep's philosophy. Remove sharp contrasts. Let the surroundings and the device agree about what the world feels like. Deployed, these instruments rest and listen. Cameras take a frame every few minutes or hours, capturing changes so slow that normal time would miss them. The video that emerges later looks like a set of clouds of life breathing. A sea star lifts an arm and turns slowly. A fish arrives, rests, leaves. A bacterial mat spreads across a patch of rock, curls at the edge, corrals itself into patterns that look like frost on a window. These images lull the mind with proof that meticulous progress can be beautiful. The oxygen minimum zones above and the high oxygen of bottom waters can sometimes meet in curious ways, and the deep adjusts. If oxygen in the deep decreases very slowly, animals may move to places with slightly better supply or reduce activity to lower demand. Everything is tuned to the delicate arithmetic of supply and use, and the arithmetic rarely changes quickly. Between the sea floor and the upper ocean, the thermohaline circulation works like a long conveyor that is less a machine than a gentle drift, rising and sinking, turning around the planet over centuries. To know this is to feel supported by something that takes its time. Now picture a day's patterns from the point of view of heat flow. As internal waves and tides move, the deep water near the bottom can be slightly warmer at one time of day and slightly cooler at another. On some slopes, turbulence mixes parcels of water up and down enough to cause a barely perceptible oscillation in temperature, perhaps a few hundredths of a degree. A thermometer fixed here might record that little breathing pattern like a signature heartbeat. The meaning is simply that even in the deepest stillness, a kind of breath remains, endlessly cycling, endlessly outstanding in its moderation. The gentle rhythm continues. On the granular scale, the contact between a grain of sand and the grain next to it is a junction where heat is conducted. Conductivity depends on mineral composition, grain size, and the water in the pores. Slight changes in packing alter these tiny pathways. To think of it is to imagine a vast mattress of beads passing warmth bead to bead with unhurried trust. Even when a deep-sea fish swims over the bed, the disturbance is local and the bed resets within seconds. The fish itself might be a rat tail with delicate fin rays that barely brush the water, its mass supported with minimal effort, its muscles tuned for efficiency rather than speed. Its presence is another quiet breath in a room that seems designed for slow, deep inhalations. If you turn your attention outward to the broader spread of the seafloor, you can trace the mid-ocean ridges that run like seams across the planet. At these seams, new crust forms at a rate measured in centimeters per year, an almost playful pace compared to a human stride. The ridges release heat and minerals steadily and help shape the outlines of the ocean basins. On the opposite side of the equation, trenches mark places where old crust returns into the mantle, sinking in a process that moves even more slowly at the surface, but carries immense importance deep inside the earth. The deep ocean seals these grand processes in a thick, cool envelope, making their manifestations at the seafloor steady and undisturbing to the many lives that rest above them. The animals that live in the deep extend the theme. Many possess long lifespans, slow growth, and low reproductive rates, matching the environment's tranquility. Some corals on deep slopes may be older than cities, adding rings year by year, turning chemicals into architecture with patience that borders on holiness. Sponges filter without fatigue, handling litres of water per hour by lifting and pushing with cilia and subtle flows. Fish mature late and spawn infrequently, placing their successes in the hands of probability spread across decades. This is not wasteful. It is a design meant for steady backgrounds and minimal surprises. The deep does not require a scramble. It rewards consistency. The carbon that rains down eventually becomes part of the sediment, and some of it is locked away for thousands of years. The seafloor thus becomes a partner in regulating the climate at the long scales that matter to the planet's steadiness. Even the slow burial of carbon is a kind of maintenance, a service quietly performed. Calcium carbonate shells from tiny plankton contribute, dissolving at depths where waters are more corrosive and surviving where conditions permit. The boundary where they dissolve, the carbonate compensation depth, is another line drawn not with a ruler, but with chemistry and time. It is a soft boundary that wanders gently with shifts in circulation and supply. If you watch the water at the boundary between the sediment and the ocean, you might see a thin layer where the two mingle, where animals stir and microbes exchange, a skin where the ocean's mood is written each moment. Pore water in the top centimeters can be drawn into the overlying water and refreshed by pressure changes as waves pass, even this deep, and by the small motions of animals moving in and out. The result is a consistent exchange that keeps the boundary supplied and clean, like a very slow respiration. The deep, in a coarse sense, is always breathing. Night and day, as we know them, do not reach here with light, but they do with subtle cues. Tides provide a twice daily pulse. Migrating animals from the midwater may visit as part of their vertical commute, descending during daylight and ascending at night. And though many remain far above, a few species may brush the bottom. Their timing adds a faint outline to the calendar of the deep. Even this line is gentle, another thread in the tapestry of repetition. Gently, you may picture sitting on the seafloor amid the diffuse glow of a vent's warm plume, feeling the slight current as it rises and then curls, mixing into the ambient water. Around you, stubby crabs pick at the bacterial mats, their claws moving in measured steps. A snail with a mineralized shell creeps on slowly, a living stone in motion. The temperature is a shade warmer here, perhaps 5 or 10 degrees above the background, but still cool, and the difference thins as you move a few body lengths away. The environment welcomes you with modest warmth, and you feel how the deep always brings extremes back to the middle. Consider the edges of continents, where the continental slope falls toward the abyss. The slope is a corridor through which sediments and water properties pass from shelf to deep. guided by density and drawn by gravity. Internal tides, generated where fast tidal currents meet the slope, propagate into the deep, where they break and mix, exchanging small amounts of heat and salt. Over your day here, these processes are present, but their expression is slow, the way tree growth is present in a forest without you ever hearing a sound. The gentle rhythm continues, with every detail capable of lulling you deeper into rest. If you widen your focus still more to the planet's poles, you find the places where deep waters begin. Cold, salty water forms under winter sea ice and sinks, filling the abyss like a calm river flowing downward. This sets the stage for the deep ocean's long-term maintenance of temperature and composition. The deep responds by carrying that water along bottom pathways, and where it meets older water, it blends. The story loops, and at no point does it ask for haste. The deep speaks in the language of patience. A day at the bottom of the ocean ends much as it began, without drama, without climax, simply by continuing. You may feel that nothing happened, and in the best possible way, that is true. The small work of maintaining warmth, pressure, and silence went on quietly and thoroughly, carried by physics and chemistry and biology in equal measures. The earth provided a thin thread of heat, and the ocean organized it into a steady background. The immense weight of water applied its pressure evenly, and life took that as a given. Sounds moved through the water as soft, rolling testimonies to events far away, and the deep softened them further. The gentle rhythm continues. As you float above the sediment, let your breathing mimic the slow movement of internal tides, in and out, like a wave that never breaks. Each breath settles you a little more. Imagine the marine snow continuing to fall at a pace too slow to feel, its particles spiraling, landing, becoming part of the quiet while remaining part of the deep's subtle cuisine. Animals move with the unremarkable grace of those who always have enough time. Microbes form films, release byproducts, feed others who in turn feed others, closing loops with the tidy efficiency of a clock that never ticks, only hums. If you need a point of focus to hold your thoughts, use the idea of pressure as a complete embrace. You are held from every direction. There are no edges, no corners, nowhere you can fall. The temperature is cool and trustworthy. The sound is smooth. These together create a mental environment identical to a perfectly arranged room, dim, soft, and safe. You can wander through it and find nothing sharp and nothing urgent. This room extends in all directions for thousands of kilometers. Rest within it. The deep looks after its balances with the exact kind of attention a tired mind desires. Continuous, non-judgmental, without surprise. The last part of your day here passes with the awareness that the ocean is always writing its story in patient paragraphs. The ridges add a few lines, the trenches respond, the currents revise. The animals annotate. The microbes punctuate with near invisible commas. Heat keeps coming. Pressure keeps holding. Silence keeps smoothing. If you were to return tomorrow, you would find the same page continuing, with only a few new words, and those words would feel as familiar as your favorite lullaby. When you are ready to come back to the room where you rest, know that the deep remains below, doing what it does best, maintaining the world's most calming equilibrium. Bring a little of that equilibrium with you. Feel your pillow as the sea floor. Feel your blanket as the weight and comfort of the ocean's pressure, and sense the quiet of the deep in the silence of your space. Thank you for spending this unhurried time here. If this helped you relax, feel free to leave a like and subscribe so we can keep releasing videos this often and keep you company whenever you wish. Rest well and let the gentle rhythm continue as you drift into sleep.